Welcome to another session of Stelmo's Rants and Raves. I'm Stelmo. Let's just jump right in there. So, the war continues. Okay, so the president is finally back. He has resumed military operations, but he's allegedly contemplating some super major, I mean, above and beyond anything else that's happened, attack. And I don't know why you would ever advertise this in the press, unless, of course, you're still delusional and hope that you're going to scare these religious zealots into making a deal. Because they will make a deal. There's no doubt they'll make a deal. They'll say probably just about whatever they need to say to stop the attacks. But they're not going to follow that deal or anything. I mean, they haven't in nearly 50 years. Well, I don't think they're going to start now. Although sometimes I think that Trump, his head is so swelled up that he thinks that he's going to be the exception to this. And what makes me go out on a limb and say something like that is he keeps trying these ridiculous scare tactics that haven't worked yet and are not going to work. Mr. President, you need to get this thing ended. Remember, it was only supposed to be a couple-week operation, and then it was supposed to be over. That hasn't happened, and it doesn't look like it's going to end any year soon. And what I fear the most is, you know, I listened to the president, and he explains to us how the Iranian military has been really decimated. They got nothing left. Well, they got enough left to attack other countries. They have enough left to fire at our bases that are located in other Mideast countries. They're able to hit ships and have them light on fire. So with their decimated military, they're still able to do far too much. And the Strait of Hormuz is not open. Now, it was at least a month ago that you made a comment that the reason you were considering a peace deal was to avoid a worldwide depression. Well, I think we're going into that worldwide depression. I think half of the world is already there. Fortunately for us here in the United States, we're a little bit behind the times. But I think that's what's going to happen. And things won't start to straighten out until the Strait of Hormuz is straightened out and reopened. And I don't mean just the president coming out and saying, hey, it's open. Because he said it I don't know how many times, and ships keep getting fired on. Yeah, and he complains. He says, yeah, they made an agreement. And the first part of the agreement is they're to open the Strait of Hormuz, and they didn't do it. President Trump, they'll play you for a sucker as long as you allow them to. And the sad part is you've already allowed them for much, much more than you ever should have. This is really going to destroy. I don't know that it will destroy your credibility, but it's certainly going to destroy your record. You could have went down in history as being one of, if not the greatest American president, certainly in the top three. But now I don't think you're going to be near the bottom of the barrel. Because you have created problems. And it seems like you don't want to fix these problems. And there is only one way that this is going to be fixed, and that's to defeat the IRGC, because these are religious loons, okay? They believe, rightly or wrongly, that God is on their side, and ultimately, as long as they stay with the plan, they ultimately will be the victors. And of course, we all know that that's probably not going to happen. But you can't tell that to religious zealots. They're not going to buy it. And that's why And let us, nobody wants to talk about this, but the Quran lets them know that, yeah, if you want to lie to the infidel to benefit your cause and for the furtherance of Islam, go for it. It's not sinful. There's nothing wrong for it. It's the desirable thing. So as long as you have a religion that says, hey, it's okay to lie to your enemy, how can you ever trust them? But yet, you seem to want to go that route. And what you're doing is you're hurting Americans in so many ways. I mean, you brought all that military equipment over there, then you send half of it back, and then you're bringing it all back again. This is money we're wasting we don't have. You're looking for, I believe the latest I heard is 98 billion more because of this war. Although not all 98 billion is necessarily going to go to the war, because they, you know how both parties are. They like to tack on some of their pet projects that they would not otherwise get unless they could find something like a wartime appropriation bill to attach it to get it passed. And so we're spending more money that we don't have. And here's the interesting thing about this. President Trump was pretty vocal with his last Fed chairman. And he wants interest rates coming down. And the reason is because the interest rate and the amount of money and interest we're paying every year is unsustainable. And so if you can just get them interest rate down, why? Things will be so much better. And, I believe, going back to Obama, one of the arguments for increasing the amount of spending as much as that they did was that, money's cheap now. It's, next to nothing interest rate. And it's true, it was back then, it was low. But since that time, since the pandemic, when spending went through the roof, and I'm not saying that, a good percentage of spending wasn't necessary under the circumstances, but they've continued to add on to that exorbitant spending as we've moved forward. And now our budget is it's ridiculous. And yeah, you got members of both parties talking about how it's unsustainable. Yet, as unsustainable as they may claim it is, nobody's taken any steps to fix anything. Now, this week, when I was watching the 10-year T-bill interest rate, except for Friday, every day it was going up. We actually went to 4.7-something%. It's the first time I've seen 4.7 in quite a long time. And what this means is mortgage rates are going up. And as the United States continues to have to borrow more and more and more and more, and there are less and less and less and less people inclined to purchase that debt, the only way they're going to find any purchasers is to increase the amount of interest that these people are getting. And I saw one headline on MarketWatch that said that if the president gets some of his desired policies for the housing market in place, that interest rates may surpass 10%. Now, boy, is that ever going to be fun. But the reality is there's going to be more inflation. I know they're claiming that there's hardly no inflation out there now. And of course, like all the other government numbers, nobody believes them anymore. Nobody trusts the government. Nobody, because the government has lied about these numbers for so long it isn't even funny. And Donald Trump, he did fire whoever was responsible for the BLS labor numbers, because he far too quickly took credit for high numbers of job creation and touting all the great things that his economy was doing, only to find out that those numbers were not true, that the actual number was substantially far less. And so it was embarrassing to the president. And of course, I was mad, not so much at the president because he lives in a bubble and things, but his advisors. I know that there are many, many Republican pundits out there, and I remember during the Biden years, I remember every month when the BLS would come out with their numbers, all of these pundits would be saying, yeah, but you got to ignore this number. You got to look at what it eventually gets revised downward to. Everyone knew it would all be revised downward. Biden used to tout how he created over 1 million jobs. And yes, if you totaled all the original BLS numbers for each month during his presidency, yeah, he created over 1 million jobs. The only problem is in all the subsequent revisions, not only did those million jobs disappear, but other jobs were added to the disappearance as well. And in my mind, that clearly illustrates that during the 4 years of the Biden administration, we were in a recession. There were less people working. But, you know, we keep changing the definition of these terms so that nobody knows whether we're in one or not. But here's the key. So Trump fired the head of the BLS and put his person in there. But it's the BLS that also puts together the inflation numbers. And I contend, just like they're in their jobs numbers were inflated on the upward side, I think that their numbers on the inflation are revised on the downward side. Because anybody who did any shopping for any amount during the Biden years knows that things went up a lot more than 20%. And, you know, people are tapped out. People don't have the money to spend anymore. And, of course, they're hurting more now because, yeah, for a while, gas prices came down. And they're still a tad below where they had gotten to during the Iran war. But they've never gone back to where they were prior to the war. And now they're going up again because combat has resumed once again. And of course, you know, when I listen to the president and some of his advisors, it really sounds to me like they're still negotiating and looking for a deal. You know, you just might as well surrender and just say, we're out of here or something. Save the taxpayers some money. I don't get it. I really do not get it. And I know that there are some who believe that we're trying to actually collapse the system. And these people think that if we can collapse the system and then in doing so erase all our debt, we can start over again. Well, nothing's going to play out that simple, let me tell you. And I don't think people fully understand the implications of what would happen if all of our debt did suddenly disappear like that. It's going to be more problems than it's worth. So, you know, I keep experiencing the same problems day in and day out. And that's this war is taking forever. Mr. President, I know you're hesitant to put boots on the ground, but I think that that's ultimately what's going to have to happen. No, I don't think we need to have boots on the ground like we did, let's say, in Kuwait. I think that we could utilize 82nd and 101st Air Assault, and both of them can air assault in and out of areas. And we could find where the IRGC troops are and just send in our troops there. You know, these Iranians, you know, they look mean and lean for the cameras, okay? But in practicality, these people aren't well-trained fighters at all. And when they meet a trained force, they're going to go down for the count. Now, we have inflicted a tremendous amount of casualties on them already from our bombing and missile campaigns and the like. So I think that these forces are in tatters. And one of the things that again, I'm never going to understand this because Donald Trump, before Iran was making any headlines in the mainstream media, the protests had started in Iran. And the president sent messengers to the Iranian people. But it appears that he keeps deserting these people. Although recently, he did once again mention that, he has to look out for them and everything. But I really think that looking at the context in which that all come out, again, it seems to me like he's using it as a threatening leverage, trying again to scare the IRGC into a deal, and that's. And I know I've said this before, but I'm going to keep repeating. I finally saw the other day General Jack Kane, who I have a great respect for. I mean, this is really a brilliant military mind. And he finally came out and said, hey, the problem is the president's not negotiating with the people with the weapons. In Lebanon, he decided to exclude Hezbollah, and Hezbollah says, well, the heck with that peace treaty. We want nothing to do with it. We're going to keep firing on Israel, and then when Israel would fire back, the president would get mad at Israel because his peace deal is teetering on the brink of collapse. Well, Mr. President, it was your fault by not including Hezbollah to those agreements. And likewise, in Iran, you have to include the IRGC. Yes, the civilian government wants a deal. I have no doubts that they really are sincere in wanting to negotiate, but the problem is they don't control the weaponry. The IRGC does. So you enter into an agreement with the civilian government, and you claim that the Strait of Hormuz is open and ships start to go through, and the IRGC has the weapons, they fire them and blow up the ships. I don't know how long this can go on. It's already going to have a catastrophic amount of problems moving forward on our economy, on our supply lines, and right now it's incalculable. Nobody can tell you exactly how bad it's going to be, other than to say it's going to be pretty bad. And that's because, all of these things have all different tentacles out there in all different ways. And nobody really knows how they're all intertwined and whatever. And when you deal with the supply chain like we're happening, and I know everyone talks about the oil aspect of it, but there's a lot of other goods that have to transit the Strait of Hormuz, and they're all being backlogged. And this is just going to have catastrophic outcome. But there is a solution, and the solution is to take out the IRGC. Because, see, once you take them out, Mr. President, then there could really be a long-lasting peace in the Middle East. And that will all be credited to you. So I'm baffled why you don't want that. I know in the beginning, when the war was just starting out, I listened to a lot of these pundits, and they were all talking about how this was going to magnify your great accomplishments and make you the greatest president of all time, the president who finally brought peace to the Middle East. But then we go from talk to practicality, and it seems to me that any sense of sanity has disappeared, because instead we're playing this game. We're keeping the Strait of Hormuz. It's virtually closed. Yeah, a ship here and a ship there do get through, but when you look at the total number of ships that haven't made it through, you can see how this problem is growing, and it keeps growing exponentially. And it's growing in ways that I think even a lot of people, including myself, fail to understand at this point in time. And again, it has to do with because all of these tentacles. You know, how many ships have been bottle logged for months now? You know, even when the strait has been allegedly open for business, not all of the insurance companies for these ships have given the okay for them to go through. They said, well, if you're going to go through, our policy is not going to be in effect because we're not willing to take that additional risk above and beyond really what we've already projected for in the amount that we've charged. And so, you know, it's such a disaster over there. And the poor American people are the sufferers. Because once again, the price of gas is heading upward. I don't know where it's going to end up, but I hear there's very little reserves left out there. The only fortunate thing is because much of the world is already in a depression, and the rest of the world is either in a recession or teetering on being in a recession. And this is only going to progressively get worse. And I know the president's advisors warned him about this because he said he was looking for a peace deal to avoid a depression. So here we are weeks later, and we're still at the same point. Perhaps, you know, at some point in time, decades from now, historians are going to write that the major problem that happened during this whole thing was when Trump decided he wanted to have ceasefire, which I think the only reason he decided he wanted to do that is because he wants to be known as the president of peace. He's never going to get a Nobel Peace Prize. They're never going to allow that to happen because it's a leftist organization and they can only give it to leftists. I mean, Obama just basically got sworn into office and he was given a Nobel Peace Prize. He hadn't done anything to warrant it. And in fact, he started and was responsible for a number of bombings and killings and the others like that you would think wouldn't be going to a person eligible for a Nobel Peace Prize. But yeah, they gave it to him because it's, you know, a leftist organization touting their leftist people. But you're not a leftist, Mr. President. So you're not going to get a Nobel Peace Prize. That much is, you can bank on it. But you still have this thing where you believe in peace. And peace doesn't work with religious zealots. It doesn't work with dictators. So it seems to me that if you really want to be known as the president of peace, the easiest and best way is to take out the IRGC. The sole, they are really, because they finance Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, and if that financing were to disappear, so would these other organizations. And once they have no more money to pay their people, those people are gone by the wayside. And there could be some long-lasting peace in the Middle East, and you would be responsible for it. But for some reason, you don't want that. You know, I think you want to keep this going long enough to the midterms so that you guarantee lose the midterms. I'm beginning to really think that you like getting impeached. Because everything you're doing is saying, I dare you to impeach me a third time, and they're going to do it if and when they take control of the House. And, you know, it's looking, there's a long time between now and that election. But unfortunately, a lot of these voters are still going to feel a lot more pain that is going to be fresh and new because you haven't ended this. You know, if you wouldn't have had, and I know you call it a ceasefire, but it was never a ceasefire, but I know you wanted to have your cake and eat it too, I guess, because you kept saying we're in a ceasefire, but I've never seen a ceasefire that had both sides firing on each other as often as, I mean, because it was almost daily. Once in a great while, you might find one day that neither side fired upon each other. But it was mostly a hostile ceasefire. But, and you kept negotiating with people who, for decades, as long as they've been in power, they've been known to renege on all their agreements and things. These are things they're not going to do. They are not willingly going to give up their nuclear program. It's just not going to happen. You're going to have to fully take it away from them. And the only way you're going to do this successfully is to make sure that they're removed from power. That's what has to happen. There is no other solution. And hopefully it will happen soon. I know I keep waiting. I'm patient. And unfortunately, being patient is also going to be costly because the inflation is going to start back up again. I know they're trying to tell us that the inflation is all down and everything, but Trump's got his person now in the head of the BLS, and they're the ones who are coming out with the inflation numbers. So pretty soon they'll probably try to tell us that when we go grocery shopping, we're actually, the store's giving us money to put in our pockets after we take all the groceries off their hands or some sort of stuff like that. But these are all falsehoods, and the reality is that the Americans are tapped out, and your actions and inactions are both going to further the tapping out of their wallets. They have nowhere else to turn other than to turn for a different political ideology. And that's why right now socialism is so attractive to so many Americans. And every month it becomes even more attractive to more Americans as more and more people find that they don't have the money to pay their bills and to do all of the things that they have been doing for so long. So I don't know what the future holds. I'll be honest there. But right now it's looking gloomy, because days turn into weeks and weeks turn into months, and before you know it, months are going to turn into years. And this is one thing that President Trump ran on: no new wars. But here he has one now. It's been going on for months. It was only supposed to be weeks, so we were lied to right from the beginning, just like we were lied to about the Epstein files. We were lied to about the gold in Fort Knox and so many other things. You know, in Donald Trump's first term, he worked really hard to get all of his campaign promises accomplished. Here in his third term, he's not doing the same thing. And I know he's been fairly successful with his the people who he endorses. They have been cruising to victory, but the problem is going to be in the general elections. And that's where you're going to need independents. And the independents are fleeing because, you know, their pocketbooks are empty and they don't know where they're getting money to pay their bills from. It's a sad, sad situation. But it is what it is, and we got to deal with it. And with that, I guess I've ranted enough for today, and I'm going to close for now. But I wish you all have a good day. Stay safe. And I'll talk to you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.